Alright, what's going on everyone? Today I'm going to show you how to upgrade a Magic Arena starter deck that you get for free on Magic Arena. We'll be upgrading the deck in 2 stages. First, I'll show you how to upgrade the deck with no rares, so you can do this on a budget, and then I'll show you how to incorporate some rares and mythics if you want to, though I do caution you to use your wildcards wisely because they are so hard to get. So today we're upgrading the Line of Fire deck, which is a Rakdos Sacrifice deck, as you can see with things like Blood Aspirant, Slaughter-Priest of Mogis, and Direfleet Warmonger. All of these cards get more powerful when you sacrifice things. The Aspirant gets a counter, the Priest gets +2/+0, and the Warmonger will let you sacrifice things before you go to combat, and it'll become a 5/5 with trample for 3, so not bad. Then we have cards that kind of like to be sacrificed, like Serrated Scorpion, Careless Celebrant, Discordant Piper. All of these have abilities that trigger when they die, so you can sacrifice them and get some value while making all of your other payouts more powerful. Like sacrifice Discordant Piper, not only do you get the sacrifice trigger to pump all your stuff up, but then you get a goat that can be sacrificed the next turn. Before we get into our upgrades, let me say that there are tons of different ways you can build this deck. There is even a competitive meta deck right now that is a Rakdos Sacrifice deck, but it's entirely different. It uses entirely different cards. I couldn't really upgrade into that without just like building an entirely different deck, so I will leave a link to the tier 1 deck in the description and you can check that out if you want. So for our budget upgrades, we'll start by taking out 2 Infuriates for 2 Village Rites. Infuriates just don't really do a whole lot in this deck, and Village Rites is an amazing sacrifice outlet, allowing you to draw more cards while sacrificing useless tokens. We do have lots of ways to generate like goat tokens and stuff, and being able to sacrifice them for more cards is pretty good. Next, we'll take out 2 Forbidden Friendships for 2 more Serrated Scorpions. The friendship is cool because you get 2 tokens, right? So that's 2 potential sacrifice targets, but I like the value of the Scorpions. Being able to drain for 2 is pretty useful. It's really good against like mono red aggro because it can block their 1-drops and the life gain is useful. So I really like this. I like it a lot more than Forbidden Friendship. And we're going to kind of replace the value of the friendship with our next card because we're taking out 1 Alchemist gift for a 4th Discordant Piper. So Discordant Piper, very similar to Forbidden Friendship in that we get 2 sacrifice targets on 1 card. So very similar, and definitely better than the Alchemist gift, which doesn't really do much in this deck, kind of pointless. Don't really need that, so that can go out. Next, we're going to take out 2 Slaughter-Priest for 2 Blood Aspirants, just because I like the Blood Aspirants better. I like the permanent +1/+1 counter better. I do like the sacrifice ability of Slaughter-Priest better, just because it doesn't tap itself, whereas with Blood Aspirant you have to tap it, and that's really obnoxious, but I do prefer the permanent +1/+1 counter overall. Similarly, we're going to take out Elite Headhunter for a 4th Direfleet Warmonger, just because I find the Headhunter to be super clunky, super slow. I find that it's too awkward. At 4 mana, it's only a 2/3. It's very expensive to activate. I just like the Direfleet Warmonger a lot more. Next, we're going to take out 3 Careless Celebrants for 3 Demon's Disciple. Remember that the worst case scenario is you play the Disciple and just sacrifice it to itself, right? It's 3 mana, basically make the opponent sacrifice something. But I do like that you can opt to sacrifice a goat token, or sacrifice a Serrated Scorpion, something like that, so you can keep a 3/1 around. And regardless, the sacrifice is going to trigger all of our stuff. It's going to put a +1/+1 counter on Blood Aspirant and stuff like that, so very useful. Finally, I want to take out 2 Fire Prophecy for 2 Bloodchief's Thirst, and that's just because I think this is a more optimal removal spell. Even if we do lose that ability to filter a card, I like Bloodchief's Thirst a lot better. And that's it for the budget build. Moving on to rares and mythics, I think we can take out the last Fire Prophecy for another Kroxa, because Kroxa is a beast that can absolutely win games by himself if the game goes long. It's great against control, it's great against mid-range, just because it can keep coming back from the graveyard. It's really good. And I also want to take out the final Slaughter-Priest for another Kroxa, just because I think Kroxa can straight up win games by himself, and I just like that a whole lot. By the way, guys, some of you might not know this, but you can actually sacrifice Kroxa when you cast it for 2, not when you escape it. You don't want to do it when you escape, but when you cast Kroxa for 2, you can sacrifice them to things like Village Rites and whatnot. You do have to hold full control, but I'll show a video here. You can cast Kroxa. If you're holding full control, the abilities will go on the stack, and then you'll gain priority again to cast stuff. If you don't hold full control, it'll pass through that, and just the abilities will start resolving. But if you hold full control, you can cast Kroxa, the abilities go on the stack, and then you can cast Village Rites, and that's like free value because you're going to sacrifice Kroxa regardless, right? You have to when you cast it for 2 mana from your hand. So it's free value if you have a sacrifice outlet. Hold full control when you cast Kroxa, and you have the ability to sacrifice them to stuff if you want to. Pretty cool. Anyway, next I want to take out Piper of the Swarm for a Woe Strider. The Piper's cute since it gives you like an endless stream of rats, but I find that it's super clunky and super slow. Like you can't even really start producing rats effectively until like turn 4 or 5. And I just think Woe Strider's better just because it attacks better. I also want to take out the Eat to Extinction for our Crone War. Both of these are basically 4 mana, kill a creature, sort of. Although with a Saga, we take control of a creature and then we can sacrifice it, right? So we take a creature, we can maybe attack with it for a turn, and then we can sacrifice it to Direfleet Warmonger or whatever. So it's a little bit more effective in our deck. And fun fact, when we have to sacrifice the Saga, it will actually trigger Blood Aspirant, because Blood Aspirant just cares about something being sacrificed. So sacrificing a Saga as part of how Sagas work will actually put a +1/+1 counter on all of our Blood Aspirants, so that's cool. And lastly, I want to take out the Tectonic Giant for Rankle, just because Tectonic Giant, you know, it's cool, but it's not really a good fit in this deck. It doesn't really do much for us. It's just it's a decent card. You got it on your account if you didn't have one already, so it's a reasonable card. Underplayed, I think, but not really useful in this deck. Rankle, on the other hand, no, it's flying, it's evasive, it has haste, and it's another sacrifice outlet. Lets us sacrifice our stuff. We can draw cards with it if necessary, stuff like that. So yeah, pretty useful in this deck. More useful than Tectonic Giant in my opinion. And as always, you can upgrade the mana base with Fabled Passages, Pathways, and Scrylands. And the Fabled Passages in this deck are particularly good because you have to sacrifice them, and that will indeed trigger Blood Aspirant. Blood Aspirant says any sacrifice, anytime you sacrifice a permanent, it gets a counter. So sacrificing a Fabled Passage actually counts for Blood Aspirant. Pretty cool. So definitely worth adding those to the deck. And that's it for all of our upgrades, although once again, I must say there are a lot of juicy options for this deck. I had so many cards to pick from. There are actually a lot of really cool Sacrifice Matters cards in Standard right now. So for example, like one of the builds I wanted to try was Claim the Firstborn and a Crone War. So basically with these two cards, you focus more on stealing your opponent's stuff and sacrificing them instead of having to play your own stuff. It's really fun, it's just not reliable because if the opponent doesn't have creatures, then you can't sacrifice anything. The other danger is like against like Yorion control and stuff, they don't typically have a ton of creatures. So it's like a funny deck against creature-based decks, but then it completely falls apart when you're not playing a creature-based deck. But kind of a cool idea, something to consider. I also desperately wanted to include Call of the Death Dweller and Archfiend's Vessel, just because I love this combo so much. I play them a ton along with Serrated Scorpion. I've played so many decks with these three cards, just because they're so good. You get so much value from recurring Serrated Scorpion over and over again with the Call of the Death Dweller, and then Archfiend's Vessel puts out a 5/5, so it was really cool, but I found that it watered down the deck too much. Archfiend's Vessel didn't really work well with the rest of the deck, other than being a useful target to sacrifice, but trying to include this reanimation theme, it sounds like a good idea since you're sacrificing stuff, but I found that like I draw all my reanimation stuff but no sack outlets, or I draw all my sack outlets and like a Call of the Death Dweller but nothing good to sacrifice, stuff like that. So it kind of watered down the deck, and I don't know, it was okay, but not great, but something to consider. Maybe with a little bit more tuning, a more reanimation style deck with all the sacrifice outlets could be pretty good. I also wanted to play Nightmare Shepherd really bad. The big issue with this card is there's just too many 4-drops. I wanted to play more Crone Wars. I wanted to play Nightmare Shepherd. It's just such a cool card. It wouldn't work well with the last screen. This doesn't work well with reanimation just because you have to exile everything so nothing goes to your graveyard. But, you know, sacrificing stuff to Direfleet Warmonger and then just exiling it and getting a token that you can sacrifice next turn is really cool. So Nightmare Shepherd could be really good. And the same is true, by the way, with like Carter's Vicious Return. This is another card that I really wanted to add to the deck, but it's another 4-drop. There's so many good 4-drops. It's a sacrifice outlet. It does make both players discard, which is whatever. And then at the end of it, you get to reanimate a creature. So that's another card that could go into like the reanimation deck with like Archfiend's Vessel and stuff. It's a really cool card. I actually really like it. I could see this going pretty well with Serrated Scorpion, Call of the Death Dweller, Archfiend's Vessel, and then, you know, your Sacrifice Matters stuff. So there was a deck there. I wanted to try that. I think it could be pretty cool. I messed around with it a little bit, but it never felt great, but I think it could be pretty cool with a little bit of work. So yeah, there's just so many cool ways to build this deck. But anyway, that's the deck. I think we're definitely much better than when we started. You know, we have a lot more power. We have a lot more consistency, I think. The payoffs are better because they're permanent with the +1/+1 counters. And if you want to try the decks yourself, check out the description. I will post both versions of the deck and the Magic Arena format, so you can just copy it and import it straight into Arena. Even if you don't have the wild cards, you don't have to worry about it. It's not going to auto craft them. It'll just add the deck to your decks, and then you can open and look at it, and you'll have the craft option if you want to spin the wild card, so you can at least look at it, change it if you want. If you don't want to spin the wild cards on certain cards or whatever, but you can open them up in your arena client, check them out if you want. And yeah, that is the Line of Fire deck. Hopefully that is helpful. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.